For our next story, after surviving his first year as a math and science teacher in a small rural secondary school in Swaziland, Will finally gets settled into his new community until one day a little girl schools the teacher and he realizes not is all sunny skies in green veld. Please welcome Will Spargur, one of our producers, in his story, The Little Girl and the Apple Core.
Crunch. I take a bite of a juicy green apple. I'm a teacher at Makosini Secondary School, math and science teacher. Makosini Secondary School is a small rural school in the southern part of Swaziland, right on the border with South Africa. And I decided to take my vacation, it's summer, and I decided to take my vacation just hanging out on the homestead with my Swazi family. As I eat that apple, I feel like I'm Adam in the Garden of Eden, because it's truly paradise where I live. It really is. When I look out over the wide expanse of the South African veld, it goes out way toward the horizon. Because it's the summer, the rains have come, and with the rains of life, the veld is covered with lush green grass and maize fields. Way in the distance, I can see the faint peaks of the Drakensberg Mountains. And then above me, when I look at the sky, it's this brilliant, deep azure blue with clouds that look like giant cotton balls. When I turn around and look behind the homestead, there's this bright red dirt road, and on the hill beyond that, there's these groves of jacaranda trees with their brilliant purple blossoms. I eat that apple and think, oh my God, this is so amazing. I can't believe I live here. And then I notice one of my sisters, Tutu, one of my Swazi sisters. She's about 8 years old, and she's following me around the homestead as I'm just kind of perusing around. But she's not in the open. She's kind of looking behind, she's hiding behind the huts and taking a look around the corner of the huts, checking out what I'm doing. Now, I've been there a year, but even after a year, a lot of people still look at me as something of a novelty, so I don't think anything of it. Let me tell you, it hasn't always been bliss. When I first arrived in Swaziland about a year ago, I had about 1 year of teaching experience under my belt. I taught geology to civil and construction engineers at Iowa State University. Let me tell you, teaching to college students is a bit different than teaching to secondary school students. Now, the Peace Corps recruiter told me that the kids in Africa, they're studious, they're quiet, they're respectful of their elders. The kids at Makosini Secondary School, he was not talking about. The kids were just as devilish and mischievous as any kid in the United States. When I was teaching, whenever I turned around to write on the chalkboard, I could hear them start talking almost instantly. And at first, I didn't have any experience, so I'm thinking, maybe it will quiet down if I just keep writing. So I would write, and it would just get louder and louder. And eventually I would have to turn around and say, quiet! They'd stop for a second. And I think all is cool, so I start writing on the board. And then I could hear them under their breaths. They were whispering to each other. Quiet! Quiet! They were mocking me. By the end of the school day, I would be so stressed out. I felt like my blood was going to boil. And there was this really steep hill behind the school. And I would just sprint up that hill till I felt like my heart was going to burst out of my chest, trying to burn off the stress. And then at night, by candlelight, when I'm doing my lesson plan for the next day, whenever I imagine myself in the classroom, it would fill me with dread facing those kids again. Because I was certain somewhere in the surrounding area on the homesteads, they were planning new tortures to try out on me the next day. Well, fortunately, after a year and a little bit more teaching experience under my belt, and I got to know the kids a little bit better, things had improved dramatically. And I learned a lot of tricks that teachers use all the time. For instance, when you have a group of kids, I learned that if you just look in the center of the group, just generally in their direction, They all think you're looking at them as individuals, which is the important thing. And the ones who are mischievous, you know, the ones who talk when you're writing on the board because of their guilty conscience, they think you're staring at them. So now, whenever I'm teaching class and I turn around, start writing on the board, if I start hearing talking, I'll just stop, cross my arms. It works every time. It was like magic. So yep, after a year, things were looking up. I loved teaching. I really did enjoy it. And the homestead was paradise. And I'm eating that apple, and finally I get it down to just a little bit of corn. So I walk over to the pig pen and toss it into the pig pen. It bounces off on the pig's back and backs into the mud. Pigs jump up, squealing in excitement and starting to fight each other. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Stu2 rushes past me, jumps over the pig pen fence, and with all the momentum her little body can generate, she bashes into one of the pigs. Now this pig is like 2 to 3 times larger than her, but she is so fierce that she knocks it off its feet and it's squealing. Then she goes after the second pig, bam! And then the third kid, bang! It's amazing. She's like a ninja, and she all of a sudden she clears an area around the apple core. She reaches down, picks it up, leaps out of the pig pen, runs past me behind one of the huts. What the hell just happened? So I run toward the hut that I saw her disappear behind. I get there and I kind of peek around the edge, and there's Stu2 leaning up against the wall of the hut in the shade, and she's got that apple core and she's brushing the mud and other things that are in pig pens off the apple core. And in front of her are all her little brothers and sisters. They're ranging in age from 3 to 5 years old. So they're really tiny, and Stu2's age, so she's barely a little bit bigger. Anyway, she calls them over, and they form this semicircle around her against the wall of the hut. Then with her tiny fingers, and only a child could have done this, she starts breaking that apple core in pieces. And my little brothers and sisters start lifting up their hands like this. And in each one of their hands, she takes a piece and puts it in. Now these pieces are no bigger than the tip of your finger. And she makes sure that all her little brothers and sisters have gotten an apple core. And they run off, giggling with excitement, popping those sweet little bits in their mouth. And then finally, Stu2 just has a little piece of apple core left, and she pops it in her mouth. In our culture, apples have all sorts of symbolism. In Christian mythology, in the Garden of Eden, in the center of the Garden of Eden, was the tree of knowledge, which was an apple tree. And it said that when Adam took a bite from an apple from the tree of knowledge, he felt ashamed because he realized he was naked. After I saw Stu2 do that, I ran right to my hut because I had a huge bag of apples in my hut that I bought in town. There were no apples on the homestead. I took that bag and I brought it out and started passing out the apples. They were gone in seconds. But what I did was nothing, because I did it because I was ashamed. Stu2, on the other hand, with her just tiny little apple core, she made sure that all her little brothers and sisters were taken care of. And then, only after all that, did she take a bite.